Hi, I'm John Little, and this is the ShockCast for Tuesday, February 20th, 2018. I said that I said, Lord willing, we would have it out on Monday, February 19th, but it didn't quite work out that way. Anyway, we'll be reading from the shock letter that was sent out on Saturday, February 17th, and of course I normally get them out on Friday, but it was Chinese New Year. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So let's get started. The title is Chinese New Year and the Horror in South Africa. Well, it's that time of year again where the Chinese get to celebrate a new year, and I get dragged off to visit the in-laws. I hate traveling, but I like my in-laws. So it's always a time of mixed emotion. It also means that I get my weekly articles out rather late. The other thing that's happening is genocide in South Africa. It has been going on for a while, but the tempo is starting to increase. We all should be horrified by this and praying for our brothers and sisters who are about to suffer greatly. Please remember that our time of suffering is coming. It is the year of the dog. And everyone who is Chinese knows what year they were born under. For instance, Mrs. Little is a rooster. And I've been told that I'm a goat. It kind of gives you a bit more you get more understanding of the saying, you old goat. The problem that I have with Chinese New Year is having to travel. I hate traveling, with a surprising amount of passion. Surprising, I should say, to everyone else but me. Why do people feel the need to move about from place to place? I used to think of culture as fascinating until I realized that everyone is distressingly the same, and that culture is just the packet of lies that we share with each other to convince ourselves that we are better than we really are. Everyone thinks that their culture is the best, that they are in some way superior to someone else. There are times when that attitude is cute, but generally it's just an invitation to mass murder and genocide. But I don't want to talk about that quite yet. The thing that I find interesting about Chinese New Year is that it's a lot like something else that you've probably read about. In fact, I'll drop a few hints. For Chinese New Year, you must do lots of cleaning before the holiday. Observe it in the spring. Put red on the doorposts and lintel. Gather your family indoors and eat lamb. Do all the above, or a monster will kill you. And also it must last for several days. Oh, and this celebration marks the beginning of the year. If all of that reminds you of Passover, well done. And if you are wondering if there's a connection, I'm afraid that no one knows. In fact, we don't actually know where this celebration of Chinese New Year comes from. The reason for Chinese New Year was never written down by those who started it, and it began so long ago that no one knows where it came from. How long ago? Thousands of years. Thousands of years. It would be highly ironic if China turned out to be a group of Israelis that got lost following Moses out into the desert. But I'm afraid that this is a line of thought that is far too fanciful. But when we walked into my brother-in-law's apartment in Chiayi Thursday night, he proudly proclaimed that we could have lamb if we wanted it. Whatever the connection there might have been between Passover and Chinese New Year, that connection has long since died of old age. What we have today is unrelentingly pagan. However, there is one silver lining to this day of family gathering and temple worship. Christians get to go to church, which my in-laws did. Whenever there's a pagan holiday, it's always a good time to go to church. I'm sure that there are many who feel a bit horrified by this idea, but going to church is always a good idea. I also added to my list of stories to tell, but I shall save those for later because there is a story of horror that is gathering strength, and we aren't paying attention. That story is about the white farmers of South Africa and the disenfranchised and homeless whites in the cities. It's also a story of waste, corruption, crime, and utter insanity. And you are not hearing this story. Why? Because the mainstream media isn't interested. These are white men and white women and white children that are being robbed, raped, tortured, and then murdered. And these murders represent a failure of the Marxist ideals that journalists seem to uphold everywhere. Do you remember the apartheid that everyone thought of as evil? I remember. Lots of you in your 40s and older will remember. You might even have joined the marches and the campaign to divest from anything and everything South African until the apartheid was over. If so, you might have blood on your hands when all of this is over. Why? Because genocide has arrived in South Africa, and it has been feeding on the white farmers. It has been destroying the lives of hard-working whites in South Africa. It is even about to start destroying the lives of blacks in South Africa. Even more important, we have brothers and sisters in Christ who are in harm's way in South Africa. Is anyone sounding the alarm? Well, yes, but I don't see any Christians sounding the alarm. I don't want to blame all Christians, but I'm not happy that non-Christians are doing more to bring awareness to the horror of South Africa. You'll see the 3 videos and the single article at the beginning of the research section below, and I'll be reading that when we get to it. Please watch those, if you can. Please spread the word. As bad as it has already been, things are about to get even worse. Please also understand that South Africa is the future. When you look at history, you'll see that genocide is a way of life for humanity. Everybody and everyone did it, for reasons that were as ugly as the act itself. And that means that your amiable Joe six-pack neighbor will quickly turn murderous maniac when the lights go out. This horror is just the beginning of horrors. And my sincere hope is that you will be ready when our time comes. Please pray for our brothers and sisters who have already begun to die in the killing fields of South Africa. And now we'll get into what I've written, the selections of what I've written in terms of the research section below. So I'll get into my comments on the 3 videos that I watched, and hopefully you'll have a chance to as well. And then the 1 article, and then we'll go on to some other things in terms of what I saw in the previous week. So this one is, the first video is White Farmers Slaughtered in South Africa, Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux, YouTube. As I was listening to this, I was struck by a number of thoughts. Israel, God, intelligence. Having studied and immersed myself in the history of modern Israel, I quickly recognized the story being told. In fact, you could replace the whites with the Jews, the blacks with the Arabs, and you would have the story of Israel. And just like with Israel, the mainstream media is not interested in the truth. Have you heard about what the blacks are doing to the whites in South Africa? You have if you have been reading Omega Shock, even though it's not my focus. You would if you were reading news sources that were outside of the mainstream. But if your only source of news was your local newspaper, your television, or your high circulation news magazines, you would hear nothing. Do you remember when I talked about the big lie? Of course you do. I keep referring to it. But the truth in that article is at the center of the horrifying genocide that is about to fall upon South Africa. I provide a link in the notes. Lies kill. And the whites in South Africa that are being murdered every day are being murdered by those lies. The mainstream media is complicit in those lies. The black leaders of South Africa are creating these lies. The liberals are giving money and support to these lies. And the lying will not end when the last white South African lies dead in her grave or is on the last plane out of Johannesburg. No, the lies will find a new target. This discussion belongs under the Matthew 24/7 category, but I'm not putting it there because there are 2 more points that do not belong there. Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux are both missing the key point in this video. They speak to the external characteristics of this growing genocide in South Africa, but they dodge the source. They talk about the superiority of European values and civilization, but they do not speak about the reason why European values are so much stronger and more advanced than black and Muslim values and their civilizations. What they are dancing around, assuming that they recognize that, What are they dancing around, assuming that they recognize that they are doing so? Christianity. You don't need to be a Christian to benefit from Christian values. Most of Europe and North America aren't Christian. Yet the moral principles of the minority who are Christian and live on in the parts of Europe that are successful, yet the moral principles of the minority who are Christian do live on in the parts of Europe that are successful. I didn't write that very well. In fact, I have come to a conclusion that took me decades to see. Without Christianity, you cannot have democracy. Without a belief in Jesus Christ as God and as the one who came and died for our sins, there can be no democracy. Why? Because only a belief in Jesus Christ can allow you to make a personal sacrifice for the good of a neighbor or stranger. Only through Jesus Christ can you be the preservation that preserves your neighborhood and community, the salt of the earth. And I find it ironic that people like Stefan Molyneux cannot see the Christian origins of the philosophy that he espouses. Yes, there are many who like to claim that other religions also foster the same kind of sacrificial decisions in a nation. And I'm willing to give some credence to these claims. I certainly see some of that here in Taiwan, but there is no religion on this planet that is like Christianity. In fact, Christianity is so unique that other religions have begun to adopt a Christian vocabulary and even some Christian principles. We've begun to see Buddhists here in Taipei pick up some very Christian ways of speaking. Only Christianity has a humility and forgiveness at the very core. Only Christianity has a God that sacrificed himself for us. Yes, you can point to other religions that claim to share some of these principles, but not all of them. Not the core. And they are all works-based religions. Christianity made Europe what it is today, and no, I do not mean the Catholic Church. I mean the real Christians who were persecuted by the Catholics for more than 1,000 years. They laid the bedrock of European values that made Europe successful. And now that they have discarded anything and everything to do with Christ, Europe is falling. Then there's one more thing. And it has something to do with a growing belief in an idea that there is a racial superiority. There's a growing belief that certain races are superior because they have better genes. Stefan Molyneux has been talking about this a lot more than he used to, and this Lauren Southern girl has been doing it too. I'm sorry, but this is a false paradigm. Yes, I can point to studies that have about nationalities and racial types that have higher intelligence scores than other groups, but I sincerely doubt that we have enough of an understanding of how intelligence develops to make the claims that Stefan and Lauren make. Remember that they both reject the idea of God, and they both embrace the idea of evolution and natural selection. Am I rejecting the idea that some sort of natural selection is at play here? No. But there's a lot more to this than the idea that the naturally intelligent people of Africa tended to die and the less intelligent tended to survive. Sorry, kids, but it's a lot more complex than that. A lot more complex. And yes, God is in the mix. I find it ironic that Christian or nominally Christian societies tend to be more intelligent and more successful than the similar societies under similar conditions. And I'm afraid that I love irony. And intelligence isn't as valuable as Stefan and others claim. Most people with a high IQ are dumber than a box of rocks. I've spent a lot of time with these people on their own terms and their own turf, and I am not impressed. Anyway, watch this hour-long video. I think that you will be glad that you did. It is a picture of the future and a firm step along the path that Jesus described in Matthew 24:7. And please, please, please pray for our suffering brothers and sisters in South Africa, whether white or black. This is going to be very, very bad. Then there's the next video. South Africa, failed state 2.0. YouTube. It's a much shorter and dispassionate analysis of the looming catastrophe in South Africa from Black Pigeon Speaks. This insanity is heartbreaking, but it was also foretold. There's a third video. South Africa, Civil War, Simon Roche, and Stefan Molyneux, YouTube. So Stefan dips his toe again on this idea a second time. Here's what I had to say. South Africa really does sound like it is on the brink of absolute catastrophe. Genocide is already happening, and civil war is just around the corner. And where South Africa goes today, many countries will go tomorrow. I believe that as time moves forward, we will see that the four horsemen are indeed riding. Then, as I did some research since I saw that the president of South Africa resigned, I did a look at his successor, Ramaphosa. Well, here's the title of the article, and that should tell you pretty much everything. Ramaphosa, we're going ahead with land expropriation without compensation. If you think that the new president of South Africa will be any better, think again. He will be worse. He's going to take the land of white South African farmers, and he's not going to compensate them. It's going to be horrifying. It will be worse, or at least as bad as Zimbabwe. Now, we're going to move to one of my favorite subjects, which is really peak oil. The title of this piece is The Shale Miracle and the Reality Optional World of Bizarro Finance. And you see this on Zero Hedge. I don't like quoting so much of an article, but I can't help it. James Howard Kunstler captures the reason and ridiculousness behind the situation that we are in vis-a-vis oil. We think that we have dodged the peak oil bullet, when all that we have done is dig ourselves into a pit of deepest despair. So here's the first quote. Techno-rapturists are celebrating what seems to be a blindingly bright new golden age of energy greatness. Independent oil analyst Art Berman, who made the podcast rounds the last 2 weeks, put it in more reality-accessible terms. Shale oil is a retirement party for the oil industry. Think about that quote. Well, here's the second one. The shale oil companies could get plenty of cash flow going, but it all went to servicing their bonds or other innovative financing schemes. And for many of the companies, the cash flow wasn't even covering those costs. It cost at least $6 million for each shale oil well, and it was in the nature of shale oil that the wells depleted so quickly that after year 3, they were pretty much done. But it was something to do, at least, if you were an oil company. An alternative to, 1, doing no business at all, or 2, getting into some other line of work, like yoga pants or gluten-free cupcakes. And then here's quote 3. The unfortunate part of the story is that the shale oil miracle only made this country more delusional at a moment in history when we really can't afford to believe in fairy tales. And then we have his the fourth quote and last. As it continues to get unglued, with rising interest rates especially, we will begin to see the collapse of the bonding and financing arrangements that the fundamentally unprofitable shale miracle has been based on. And sorry guys, this is me. Every shale, you should understand, every shale oil company is not making money. They're all losing money. That should tell you something. Okay, let me continue with the fourth quote. And then you will see the end of the shale miracle. It is likely to happen very quickly, and I've said this, by the way. It was fun while it lasted. Now comes the hard part. Getting through this without the nation completely losing its marbles and doing something stupid and desperate, like starting another merry little war. Close quote. If there was any way to get us to wake up from this fantasy, I would do it. But there isn't. Because we like our fantasies more than the truth. And yes, that is the source of our problems. We love delightful lies more than the truth. It is the story of our age, and we will tell that story until we collapse. What utter fools we are. Here's another on peak oil. Of course, you'll be hearing more of this as it becomes more apparent that it's true. Future U.S. oil production will collapse just as quickly as it increased. SRS Rocco Report. Here is another article that exposes the lie of the shale oil quote-unquote miracle. And these two paragraphs are the core of this article. Paragraph 1. Because the U.S. shale oil industry was a Ponzi scheme from day one, the shale oil companies had to design clever investor relations presentations to bamboozle, hoodwink, swindle, and hornswoggle. When was the last time you heard hornswoggle? Investors from their money. And boy, did it work. Even though 2/3 of the U.S. shale energy companies are still losing money, investors continue to flood the energy sector with gobs of dollars and pennies from heaven. Without these much-needed funds, the U.S. shale oil industry would go belly up. And then here's paragraph 2. Now there's another downside to the U.S. shale oil industry that I haven't yet mentioned. Because the shale energy industry is producing a grade of oil that has a very high API gravity, meaning very light oil. We have to export more and more of it as our refiners can't use it all. The notion that the U.S. decided to start exporting oil because we have become a leading oil exporter or leading oil producer is pure bollocks. And of course he uses that because he's not British. Anyway, the real reason the U.S. government allowed the exporting of oil in 2015 was that our refining industry couldn't use it. And he ends with an LOL. How ironic. We can't use all of the oil that we're producing because it's the wrong oil for all of our needs. That's right. The shale oil miracle isn't a miracle. It's a scam. And you are the victim. And the only reason why America is exporting oil is that a large part of that oil cannot be used fast enough. And that's a stupid way to use up an irreplaceable resource. And there's more in this article if you want to know the truth. If you don't want to know the truth, then carry on. Nothing to see here. Move along, move along. But really, read the article. It's important. There's a YouTube video called The Greatest Deception Ever, 2018 to 2019. I'm putting this at the top, not because of the descriptions of the demonic elements that live alongside of us. There's a very, very intelligent description of Satan in this one and of his ability. And it's from an ex-Navy SEAL that God rescued from the pit of darkness. The angels, all of them. And this is what he said. The angel, all of them, saw God create the earth and everything on it. The angels saw everything. They knew God and how powerful and wise he is. They knew all of this and more. Yet Satan was smart enough to deceive 1/3 of those angels. I hope that you understand that. And you need to get it into your head, because I've been on this rant about deception for more than a month, and it is destroying and has destroyed many, many people. Millions have died because of this deception, millions upon millions. And the deception is still at work and will now kill billions. Satan wants you to use your mental faculties. He wants you to be logical, to think this through. He wants you to use your human mind and not the different kind of mind that God gave you when he saved you. Satan wants you to use reason, to be reasonable. He wants you to think that you can actually see how it all fits together, but you can't. You don't have the physical capacity to see all the pieces and fit them together. It's just not possible. Do you remember when Jesus said that you cannot be saved unless you have the faith as a little child? Here's what Jesus actually said. Matthew 18:3. And said, Verily I say unto you, except ye be converted and become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Again, Matthew 18:3. Now Jesus was speaking of greatness in the kingdom of heaven, which you and I are a part. But Jesus wasn't just speaking of those who will be great. He was also speaking of survival, of surviving the traps of Satan. Satan will use the trap of logic. God calls us to the safety of childlike devotion. God isn't calling us to simple mindedness and stupidity. No, he is definitely not doing that. God is calling us to stand upon the bedrock of his words and his word, to not doubt anything what he says, no matter how unable we are to understand. Satan will come to you clothed in light as a minister of righteousness and deceive you with human logic. That's one of many reasons why you should be wary of false teachers like Rick Wiles, who is an excellent example of a minister of righteousness. Here is what Paul said in 2 Corinthians 11:14 and 15. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. Again, 2 Corinthians 11:14 and 15. Do not, I repeat, do not follow a minister of righteousness if that minister does not speak the truth. And my sincere hope is that you will understand that. The other thing to take away from this is the beginning part of this video. The satanic rituals, the child abuse, the horrifying nature of evil. Normal people get into this. That's right, normal people, like you and me. If you think that only an insane person could get caught, think again. You can get caught. You will get caught if you are not on your guard, if you aren't watching what Satan is doing. How do you watch for Satan? By looking at God. You don't guard against Satan by examining all the different ways that he can beguile you and trick you. No, you guard against Satan by understanding what is real and true, so that you can see what is fake. You've heard this before, but it's a good analogy. You don't know how to spot a fake dollar bill by studying fakes. You learn how to spot a fake by studying real dollar bills. Accept the Bible as true. Accept it. All of it. Be childlike in that acceptance. Know the Bible and defend yourself with those words. Do not depend on logic. And let me repeat again. The angels of heaven knew God, know God, understand God, saw his power, saw his ability, saw everything. And yet a third of them were still tricked by Satan. Please get that. It's important. In fact, you should probably watch the video. Okay, here's the next YouTube. It's called Lightning and Thunder Erupt in a Christian Church. This is an excellent expose of the corruption and corrupt philosophy within our churches, and Mike ends it perfectly. Just because so many churches are corrupt doesn't mean that you should stop going to church. No, the opposite is true. Churches need good people to help fight the corruption within those churches. I don't mean that you should seek out a corrupt church. What I mean is that you should not worry about finding the perfect church. Instead, you should seek for the church that God has called you to serve in, to help bring holiness and godliness. We all go through 3 stages of development. In the first stage, we need brothers and sisters to do everything for us. We're babies. In the second stage, we begin to mature and stand on our own 2 feet. In the third stage, we become those who feed others, who help them grow and then stand on their own 2 feet. We should strive to be the ones who are mature enough to serve and teach. We all need to be at that level. All of us. In the next one, FBI director says Chinese society, as a whole, is a threat to the U.S. This should probably sit in the corruption section, but it isn't as much about corruption as empire. The threat that Dan Coates and Christopher Wray are describing is not a threat to the safety of Americans or of the United States. The threat is to America's power and wealth, her empire. And I'm sorry, but that isn't a threat. I want the empire to fall. The American empire has corrupted America. It has destroyed the moral foundation that America and Americans once stood upon. And no, I don't mean the U.S. Constitution or the Declaration of Independence. I mean the goodness that came from a sincere desire to obey God. We lost that desire, and now we lose our wealth and power. And this is as it should be. We should lose our wealth and power after we have corrupted ourselves so thoroughly. The only question is where the line is. Where is the line that we must never cross if we wish to stay free and prosperous? And when will we receive the just reward for crossing that line? How much delay is there? I suspect that the line was crossed in the 1990s. However, Jesus said that the times of the Gentiles would be over when the Gentiles no longer controlled Jerusalem. That happened more than 50 years ago. Ultimately, it doesn't matter, except as an object lesson of how immorality will destroy a nation and people. So count me as unimpressed by the warnings given by Christopher Wray and Dan Coates. I'm not impressed at all. And we did it to ourselves. This one is from the Daily Caller. It's Justice Thomas decries victimhood culture. Clarence Thomas is absolutely right in every respect. And the only way that black people are going to overcome their current difficulties is to do well within the confines of those difficulties. When your forebears, even centuries ago, sin against God, you will suffer the consequences. And Africa, all those centuries ago, made bad choices that resulted in chaos and destruction, and then slavery. Then when they had their chance to rise out of their victimhood, along came the lying liar, Lyndon Baines Johnson, President of the United States, to hand out free money and the chains that bound them to the Democrat Party. To the black brothers and sisters that I care deeply about, you must stop lending your voice to the madness that consumes your culture and society. And if you think that my care for the black people is not genuine, well, think again. I have a deep personal commitment with many of my black brothers and sisters, very deep. The color of your skin is meaningless, literally, absolutely meaningless. It is how you use what is between your ears. That is what counts. And I'm afraid that black culture and society has made itself to be vile and repugnant to those around them. It wasn't always that way. Please, please, stop the madness. Now on a different tack, we have from Zero Hedge, gravity works. And it really does. Try it sometime. Anyway, sorry. Here's my comment. This one belongs in a lot of different places. Preparation, financial collapse, corruption. But I'm putting it here because of several quotes that should make you sit up and take notice. Quote number 1. Virtually every stock market sentiment and positioning indicator has, like the stock market itself, gone from new extreme to new extreme for months. Numerous commentators, including SLL, Straight Line Logic, yes, that's it, Straight Line Logic, have been warning for months, even years. Pick a valuation measure, and stocks, even after the last 2 weeks, are at peak valuations rivaled only by 1929, 2000, and 2007. Here's quote number 2. The 10-year note made its price high in July 2016 and has been trending irregularly lower, meaning not smoothly, and interest rates irregularly higher, meaning not smoothly higher, since. Higher interest rates raise the cost of leverage speculation, production, and consumption. Yet leverage speculators in the stock market only seem to have noticed rising yields the past couple of weeks. End of second quote. Here's the third. When governments are bankrupt, their praetorians forage when governments are bankrupt, their praetorians forage. A nice word for theft and extortion. By the way, praetorians was the personal guard of the Caesars, or the Caesars, of the Roman Empire. They were the inner circle, the praetorian guard. So the praetorians forage. They go out foraging. Continuing the quote. They'll be competing with hordes of foraging civilians, many of whom will be armed. In such a scenario, one identifiable group has a fighting chance, and it will involve fighting and lots of it. That, of course, is the group who have either been preparing for such a scenario for years or have the skill set and mental fortitude necessary to adapt to it. Much scorned, this group may get the last laugh, but it will be a grim one. And then here is the fourth quote. Sorry, doing a lot of quoting in this edition. When the government implodes, those on the receiving end of its largesse are going to be united by only two things: their outrage and their inability to do anything about it. They'll have all the solidarity of cannibals trying to eat one another. Against that backdrop will be the group who wants to provide for itself and knows how to do so. Individualism, self-sufficiency, and a love of freedom and inviolable liberties are not dead in America, but those who support them have been driven underground. They'll stay underground, come the collapse. Advertising abilities and provisions will be an invitation to brutalization, robbery, and murder, but they'll fend off the rampaging hordes, survive, and reemerge. That last word is what I want to talk about. What scares me is that he will be right, and that those who are better armed and organized will rise and take over America. If he's right, that will be the beast, and they will call themselves Christian. He doesn't understand that, but you and I should. The anti-Semite, muscular Christians will either be the beast or they will ride the beast, and they will do it in the name of Jesus Christ. Okay. We're getting close to the end. Okay, terrified of Bitcoin, banks forced to innovate for first time in 40 years, from Zero Hedge. This is part of what I meant when I talked about the barriers that need to be overcome for the beast system to rise and take over the world. Here's the relevant part of this article. Quote, when the CEO of the company launching RTP in the US announced the platform, he admitted that the RTP system will be the first new payment system in the US in more than 40 years. Not 50, 40 years. That's utterly pathetic. The internet has been around for 25 years. Even PayPal is nearly 20 years old. Yet despite the enormous advances in technology over the past several decades, the last major innovation in banking payments, or bank payments, was back when Saturday Night Fever was the #1 movie in America. Banks have been sitting on their laurels for decades, enjoying their monopoly over our savings without the slightest incentive to improve. Cryptocurrency has proven to be a major punch in the gut. The entire banking system keeled over in astonishment over Bitcoin's rise, and they've been forced to come up with an answer. Close quote. Banks and big money are fighting back against this new cryptocurrency idea, but they are slow, very slow, and they only move when they are threatened. But now that they are threatened, they are doing their best to move quickly. Will they get the governments to help them fight cryptocurrencies? Or will governments sit back and wait for this technology to develop? Will the governments choose to undercut the banks and then take the reins of commerce directly? After all, that's what the mark of the beast really is. It's the government going around the banks and taking control of the financial system directly. Please understand that. When the beast system rises, there won't be any banks. It'll be just the government with the mark. Ultimately, the writer is correct with his last sentence. The banks don't stand a chance. The future of finance absolutely belongs to crypto. Unfortunately, the truth in that statement isn't what the writer originally intended. Here's another from Zero Hedge. This may be the beginning of the great financial reckoning. This article starts out with an analysis of how much the U.S. national debt will be. In fact, he says this, quote, this means that the national debt will exceed $25 trillion by September 30th, 2000... Okay, I think I missed it. 25, I think? That's a lot. And he goes into why that's a lot, but the bigger issue is interest rates. specifically the rates that you will pay when the Federal Reserve is forced to increase the interest rates that you must pay to lure investors into buying U.S. bonds. And those rates will force you to pay higher rates. Let me quote Simon Black again. Quote, here's a simplistic example. If you can afford the monthly mortgage payment to buy a $500,000 house when the interest rates are 3%, that same monthly payment will only buy a $250,000 house when the rates rise to 6%. When you double the rates, you cut in half the house you can afford. I hope you understand that. I know it's a bit about math, but literally this is the case. So your monthly payment on your variable rate mortgage will double. But you are paying that mortgage because you believe that it's a good investment, right? Well, here's what happens when interest rates rise, and I will quote Simon Black again, quote, rising rates mean that people won't be able to borrow as much money to buy a home, and this typically causes property prices to fall. It's math, kids, and you can never escape math. Does this mean that you should sell your house and then rent a house or an apartment? Well, do the math yourself. If the numbers don't add up, you will have some thinking to do. And let me quote the last line of this article about 2018. So, this may very well be the start of the great financial reckoning. Will you be ready for this? Okay, we're still moving on. Here's the next article. James Montier, this is a great fool bubble, and I'm getting out. From Zero Hedge. Ah, yes. The greater fool. There are too many, far too many, investment strategies that require there to be a bigger fool to sell an investment decision to. But aside from the moral dimension to this idea, there are only a limited number of fools that you can sell things to. And there's always the risk of being the final fool. Here's a quote about the current financial situation that we are currently finding ourselves in. Quote, to me, these are really better described as greater fool markets. They are cynical bubbles in that those buying the asset in question don't really believe that they are buying at fair price or intrinsic value, but rather are buying because they want to sell to someone else at an even higher price before the bubble bursts. Chuck Prince, the former CEO of Citibank, aptly demonstrated the typical cynical bubble mentality when, in July of 2007, he uttered those fateful words, "As long as the music is playing, you've got to get up and dance. We are still dancing." Close quote. I'm not a professional investment guy anymore, so I can't tell you what to do. But I can tell you what I would do. And that means not being the final fool and getting out when you can. But there's also a moral dimension that we are all forgetting. Is it right to be actively participating in a system and situation where the way that you make money is for someone else to suffer? Can you, in the sight of God, encourage someone to do something that is bad for them? That you know is bad for them? And that is the moral dimension that we all face in these investment markets. Now here's one from the Gog and Magog section. The title of the article is Turkish Warships Block Cypriot Drilling Rig in Dispute Over Mediterranean Gas Field. Here's what I said, and it will be something like this that will cause Gog and Magog to be fulfilled. The devastation will be incredible, and it will be all about money. We human beings are disgusting. How dare we be so evil? And then in the same section, Russian Deputy PM, our banks are ready to turn off SWIFT. SWIFT. Well, this was only a matter of time. Russia is now ready to call America's bluff. In fact, this might turn out to be one of the things that Russia needed to help bind her allies together, setting up an alternate financial system would definitely help Russia, Iran, and any other country that is routinely accused of terrorism. When you throw a threat around too often, people start doing something about it. And then from the Israel section. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about this, but it's officially, the title is, "It's officially now illegal to accuse Poland of complicity in Nazi war crimes," from Zero Hedge. I haven't had a chance to address the comments that have come in, and I did notice that Chris from Poland left a comment. And I hope to address that and provide Chris's viewpoint as to from the ground in Poland. But I'm still very concerned about this kind of language where you set up a set of laws that keep you from speaking what you believe to be true, however wrong or evil or bad it is. There's a dividing line. It's not for me to say where that line should be. It's for Poland. But anyway, we'll get a chance to talk about that more often. Well, that's it for this week. I'm sorry that it was so late, but of course it was Chinese New Year. It's the year of the dog. If you've got one, give it a hug. Hopefully, in this coming Friday, we'll have all this fixed, and we'll have and hopefully this video will be working well. I'm still working hard to iron out all the kinks and wrinkles from, I don't know whether it's my video software or how my system is set up, but we're still getting the video and audio unsyncing, being out of sync. So anyway, have a good week. We'll talk to you more a bit later. As always, this is John Little of OmegaShock.com, and this was the ShockCast.